After a pair of what I consider to be phenomenal issues to kick off the fourth volume, issue number 21 of Skybound's ongoing Transformers series settles into what I usually expect from the series on a monthly basis. And that maybe sounds like a criticism, like the issue is not as good as previous ones, but that's not fully how I intend it. Did the issue floor me as much as issues 19 or 20 or some of my other favorite issues from earlier in the series, like issue number 6? No, but that doesn't mean it's bad. This is a great issue. And one of the things that most impressed me was how the amount of moving pieces just feels right. Like everything is balanced really well in the story. Obviously, I want to read more of the story, but with this issue, I'm not getting the feeling of not getting enough for certain storylines. I think we've reached a point where the various plot threads have been consolidated enough that there's room in the book for just about everything we care about and want to see advanced, and so it moves forward in a meaningful way, something that wasn't always the case in Volume 3. And sure, we still don't know what's going on with Carly, but that feels more like a deliberate choice to build some suspense and anticipation rather than some of the slow parceling out of plot lines that we got in Volume 3, like with all the stuff with Ultra Magnus. And speaking of, I was not expecting to see Ultra Magnus and Doc again so soon. I wasn't even sure if this was going to stay within the pages of Transformers, to be honest, but I'm glad that it's here, and I think it contributes to my overall feeling on how balanced the various plot lines feel in this issue. And it's this part with Doc and Ultra Magnus that kicks off issue number 21, and I like what's going on here for a few reasons. First, this seems to be setting up something between Ultra Magnus and Doc. What exactly that might be, I'm not sure, but it kind of seems like the creative team is hinting at a kinship forming between these two characters. Like maybe Doc ends up helping Magnus somehow. I don't know. General Flag's appearance and brief interaction with Doc is part of what is steering me in that direction of Doc potentially helping Magnus, as the medic seems to have some objections about the way Magnus is being treated. And as an aside, Flag being directly involved in this caper is an intriguing development. If you've been keeping up with the G.I. Joe side of things, then you might remember that we first saw Flag in the Destro miniseries, and the General seemed to be fully in Destro's pocket. Or at least, that was the impression I got. The G.I. Joe entity of the Energon universe is shrouded in secrecy with multiple layers of deception, and the higher-ups seem to be in bed with the enemy, so Flag showing up in issue 21 is ominous beyond making Ultra Magnus suffer. How this might factor into future stories, I don't know, but of all the things to include leading up to issue 24, you would think that this wouldn't factor into the conclusion of the arc that Daniel Warren Johnson has planned. But the fact that this sequence is included in this issue is making me second guess how important this whole plot could end up being to the end of Johnson's run. Maybe, and this might be a big maybe, but maybe the next sequence provides a clue. Back on Cybertron, Elita 1 is overseeing the repair of Shockwave's space bridge. I said this before, but it bears repeating. I love how colorful Mike Spicer's Cybertron is. It's the perfect complement to Jorge Corona's highly detailed line art, and just really makes scenes set on Cybertron stand out. They're distinct in an unmistakable way from the ones set on Earth. I'm also a big fan of Warpath's skeletal arm here. It's just a fun little detail with the Autobot not being fully repaired and all. And he echoes Shockwave's cheesy line from issue 9 where he said, "This tickles me purple," a play on the idiom tickled pink. Here, Warpath says, "It tickles me rusty," which has me wondering if he's mocking Shockwave or if it's just a common Cybertronian idiom to say tickled whatever the color character saying it happens to be. I don't know. We're really digging into the big important questions here, as we often do on this channel. So let's just put that musing aside and move on. The most impactful part of this scene is easily Shredhead's conversation with Cliffjumper. It's brief, but we get a sense of how Carly has affected Cliffjumper and how important she is to him, but also that he feels a sense of helplessness when it comes to being there for his friend. It's implied that Shredhead is going to be the one to go back to Earth, and they've been taking an interest in Carly and shown a gung-ho willingness to rush into unknown danger to save her. I'm wondering if this is how the G.I. Joe Ultra Magnus stuff will unfold across the next few issues, with Shredhead trying to rescue Carly, and by extension Magnus, as I assume they're being kept in the same place. Could be wrong though. Up till now, I assumed Shredhead was going to be reinforcements in the big stand against Megatron on Earth, but what do I know? I'm sure whatever little bits I think I have figured out, the creative teams will surprise me and something totally different will happen. But right now, I'm just spitballing based on what it seems like the text of the comics are hinting at. Could be a fake out, though, or me reading too much into it. In any case, the remainder of issue 21 takes place at the Ark, and this unfolds over several connected sequences. First, with Megatron, Soundwave, and Starscream doing some reconnaissance, where we learn that Megatron has a plan to attack the Autobots. Then we go inside the Ark, where we see Optimus undergoing what seems to be a rather grueling examination process, where Wheeljack reveals that an infection is preventing the Matrix from recharging. And we seem to finally get confirmation that it's Megatron's arm that's been causing all the problems Optimus has been having. I say we seem to get confirmation because it's heavily implied but not explicitly stated, as this section is interrupted by the main event, which is the showdown at the Ark. And even though the Autobots have these sweet-looking gun emplacements manned by Trailbreaker and Jazz, you would assume that this would be a slam dunk for the Decepticons, as they have Megatron and two combiners in the form of Bruticus and Devastator. But as you might expect from this crew based on what we've already seen, the Decepticons are their own worst enemy here, as Devastator and Bruticus begin fighting with each other, ultimately buying the Autobots enough time for the aerial bots to arrive on site and combine into Superion, the first Autobot combiner to officially appear in the pages of this series. And whoa, what an image for our first look at this combiner. Has Superion ever looked this good? It's debatable. And I'm sure this is a wrestling move of some sort, though I have no idea what it is, but man, what an awesome, awesome page. Another one of those poster-worthy Jorge Corona moments, to be sure. But it's not all sunshine and roses when Superion shows up. It should be expected of this series by now this advantage will be short-lived for the Autobots, and there will be substantial tragedy to come. Despite all the spectacle and cool action moments in this section, the big drama underpinning this battle has to do with Megatron's arm. As Optimus is preparing to shoot Megatron with his own fusion cannon, giving us this cool James Bond-esque panel where we're looking out of the barrel of the weapon, it appears that the Autobot commander loses control again, suddenly turning the cannon towards Jazz, who is saved by the very fortunate timing of Thundercracker enacting his plan, which is apparently flipping some kind of switch within Skywarp and warping the entire Ark away from the battle with this extremely cool-looking effect made up of a series of thick yellow and orange outlines. I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff, man. I don't know why. It's simple, but I really enjoy it. There have been multiple ways of depicting Skywarp's teleportation powers in this series, and they've all been different from previous depictions and just a lot of fun to look at. Really digging the effects that have been used for that ability so far, and I like the variety. Anyway, the Ark teleporting away brings Optimus back to himself long enough for him to try and tear off Megatron's arm, and being unable to do so, orders the Autobots to shoot the limb off instead. Brutal. As the Autobots are carried away by Superion, Megatron finally makes himself whole again in another killer image, easily reattaching his missing limb, a quick fix that was established as being possible back in the Energon Universe 2024 special. And now, finally restored to full strength, we get a taste of just how lethal Megatron's gun mode is as he fires on Superion, blasting Slingshot off of the combiner, killing him instantly. They just couldn't let us have that happy little moment between Optimus and the Aerobots, could they? It's just heartbreak after heartbreak with these guys. So yeah, a lot to chew on this month. It feels like we're really moving full steam ahead towards the conclusion of Volume 4 now. Some notable, long-awaited stuff happens in this issue. It feels good to see some progress on it. There were a lot of really great artistic moments in this issue as well, some of which I've already mentioned, but I want to highlight a few more before I wrap this up. There are two moments, both involving Megatron, where we don't actually see the action that is being performed. We just get some cool artistic lettering set against a stark white background to indicate the sound of what's happening. Lettering like this is pretty much a staple of the series, but what's unique here is how this is used to imply action occurring off-panel, rather than complementing actions that we see the characters performing, which is usually the case. Here, it happens with Megatron slapping Starscream, and then later we see a similar device used when Megatron decapitates Slingshot. It's a very comic booky thing to do and just a cool touch, as well as being something different for this series, at least as far as I recall. There were also a few images that I thought for sure were homages to things from Volume 1, but after comparing them to the images I had in mind, now I think they're probably just coincidences. Although I don't know, I'm still questioning whether or not Optimus and Jazz falling after the Ark disappears is supposed to be an homage to Spike and Carly falling when the Ark appears in issue 1, just, mirrored and tweaked slightly. And you have to admit, it would be an appropriate point for such a visual homage. That would be the place to do it, I guess. And then there's this great image of Optimus trying to rip off Megatron's arm. And this really reminded me of both the image of Optimus ripping off his arm in issue 3 and the infamous "How do you feel about going on the offensive" image from issue number 4. And I swear these seemed way more similar in my mind's eye or my recollection of them, but directly comparing them shows how different the pages and panels actually are. Still, though, I think there's something here worth talking about. Instead of an homage, what I see instead now is a series of striking images chronicling the saga of Optimus and his missing arm. These are kind of like the big moments in that whole thing. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if all these perceived similarities with both of the examples I've mentioned here are just coincidences, but I think that speaks volumes for how good of a follow-up Corona's art is for Johnson's, in that it feels like there's a strong sense of visual continuity throughout the series as far as movement and iconic imagery, despite the clear differences between the two artists' styles. And it's Jorge Corona drawing Transformers, so of course there's more praiseworthy imagery in this issue. Too much to cover in a short video that's already running longer than I would prefer, but I'm sure we'll get into some of it more in depth in the Teletran Tapes episode for this issue. Those are the big ones that stood out to me. But yeah, this is a good issue, very solid, and it's got me looking forward to number 22. Anyway, that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.